Good afternoon, everybody, and an extremely warm welcome to the CDP Responder Training for 2025. This training has been hosted by CDP Ireland Network and delivered by team members from both CDP and Goodbody Clearstream. If you've attended one of these workshops before, welcome back. Today's session will be familiar and will follow a similar format to previous years. If this is your first time joining us, if you're a first-time responder or thinking about responding, then you're in exactly the right place. This is a great opportunity for all CDP responders to learn more about CDP in 2025, and it also provides a rare opportunity to ask questions which will be answered by the presenters here today. Next slide. So the agenda today, after I go through a little bit of housekeeping, I'll be handing over to my colleague, Mark Bennett, who will provide a more detailed overview of the CDP Ireland Network. Mark will then hand over to Tanisha Kamet from CDP Europe. We're very, very thankful to have Tanisha here today. She has a lot of interesting detail to go through. Tanisha is going to provide an overview of CDP reporting and, most importantly, what to expect in the 2025 reporting cycle. Tanisha will then hand over to my colleague Paul Stevenson, who's going to run through some very useful tips for getting your response started and up and running. Finally, and probably most importantly, you're going to have a chance to ask questions about all things CDP. Whenever we talk to people in person about CDP, we're talking about a new reporting cycle. Everyone has loads and loads of questions. But sometimes in this format, people are a little bit hesitant. So I'll explain in the next slide how to put in the questions into the Q&A, but please do ask anything. It's very important that you do that. Next slide. So finally, so during the during the training session, the video and mic are going to be muted, and that is also to save bandwidth and also to allow you to focus on what is being presented. When you are putting questions into the Q&A, please, when you click into the Q&A, not into chat, that's going to be disabled, please select the ask a question rather than starting a discussion. That just makes it easier for us to manage the questions. When we are presenting the information this evening or this afternoon, please ask the questions as you're going along, and then we will answer them in the Q&A session at the end. Slides obviously will be shared and recorded. And if for some reason your question isn't answered or you need some further help with CDP reporting in Ireland, the CDP Ireland Network can help with that, and you can reach out to either Paul or myself. Our details are there, and we should be able to help you directly or put you in contact with the right person in CDP. So I will now hand over to Mark.
That's super. Thanks, Gavin. And many of you will know about the CDP Ireland Network, but if you don't, I thought I'd give you a quick rundown. I know we're all here to hear Tanisha, Paul, and Gavin, but I thought I'd give you a quick overview. So the CDP Network is a platform to share global best practice, but I think obviously it's quite a local network. So I think a lot of the problems that you might be meeting, not only within CDP, but also the general sector, and there might be somebody there who can help you. So it's very much a peer organization. We also have events such as supply chain and ESG. And again, they're about a specific topic, but there's the co-benefits around networking and a wider knowledge sharing. We're supported by the EPA and SCAI, and so I'm working with Goodbody Clearstream, and we're the secretariat for the network. We do an annual report, and we have a launch event very kindly hosted by ESB this year. We had over 100 people in person, and the report is quite comprehensive and has great appendices actually that you might be interested in. So I'd encourage you to go to the website where you can download it. We provide through the network free reporting support. So you can see this is one example of that. And then the annual reporting training as well. We'll have a paid for training workshop towards the end of this month. So those of you who are on the call, we can email you details of that, or you can go via the website to get further details as well. We have dedicated knowledge shares. I've got a slide on that I can go into, but we're also on social media, LinkedIn, and there's the address for the website. So really, what's it all for? Well, we're really trying to work together and get the wisdom of the crowd for a lot of these very wicked problems in sustainability. But it's also about investors and asset managers to allow companies to be best placed, for example, to raise finance or to engage with suppliers. So it has many, many uses, and we're here to help you on your journey. Next slide, please, Tanisha. So we're ably supported by a steering committee, and the steering committee for 2024-25 is here. Many names that you some people on the call, I'm sure, and names that you might recognize, and certainly companies, some of the biggest and best companies in the country are here. Again, if you go to the website and download the annual report, you can look at this at your leisure, and you can see here Brian O'Kennedy, the MD in Goodbody, Clearstream, and myself provide that support. And here we have Emily Maitland, who is also available to you as the country support for CDP in Ireland. Next slide, please, Nisha. So I just thought I'd end showing you the types of things that we talk about in the knowledge shares. So if you'd like to join the network, there's no cost to joining the network, but if you'd like to join it, we have quarterly knowledge shares, the ones that we've had so far for 2025, where KPMG in their building, talking about EU taxonomy, CSRD, other issues, the ones that we all know all too well that were in the omnibus update. And then also we had a very interesting contribution from ESB around decarbonisation of the electricity sector. So if you'd like to come to the next one or know more, please do reach out. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Tanisha. Thanks so much, all.
Thank you so much, Gavin and Mark, and hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me and see me clearly. I am very happy to be here today and introduce CDP and the 2025 disclosure cycle to you. I'll start off with a quick introduction of myself. My name is Tanisha. I'm an engagement associate on the corporate disclosure team in CDP Europe, and I'm based here in the headquarters of CDP Europe in Berlin. And as mentioned earlier, these are the contents that I'll be running you through today. So for those of you unfamiliar, I'll start out with a brief introduction of what CDP is, how we work. I'll talk about how we fit into the evolving ESG landscape today. Then I can cover a few points of what you can expect from us in the 2025 disclosure cycle. And then I'll hand it off to Paul for some tips for first-time responders and also where to find resources on our website as well as our portal. So starting off with an introduction about CDP, we are an environmental nonprofit through which companies, cities, states, and regions disclose their environmental data to stakeholders. So we were actually founded about 25 years ago to fill a market gap. Investors realized that they need to integrate climate risk into their portfolio management. So today we see that environmental disclosure has become a business norm, with a wide range of capital market stakeholders and customers requesting environmental data, and they engage companies to measure their impact and improve performance. So we have the world's most comprehensive system of self-reported environmental data, and this is utilized by a variety of stakeholders, so investors, purchasing organizations, policymakers, and other key stakeholders around the globe. So on the screen here, you can see some key figures which represent the scale of our work. For example, in 2024, we had over 640 capital market signatories and over 300 customers or purchasing organizations which requested environmental data through us. And in 2024, we also hit a big milestone. We saw over 24,800 companies disclosing through CDP and over 1,000 cities, states, and regions that also disclosed through us. So speaking about disclosure becoming a business norm, we can see this next slide really demonstrates this exponential rise that we've had in disclosure. So as of 2024, we saw a 7% increase from 2023. And as you can see from 2015 as well, we've had a steady rise. And this rise is not only in climate disclosure, which is mandatory through CDP, the mandatory theme, but also in water, forest, biodiversity, and plastics, which are the other themes that you can report on. So last year, in 2024, we saw about 7,000 companies on average disclosing with us for the first time. And we're pleased to see that so many companies are beginning to disclose on these other environmental issues, with this huge increase, as I mentioned, in biodiversity and plastics, even though these topics are not scored yet. So climate, water, and forests are scored, biodiversity and plastics not scored. Still, we see a huge increase in companies interested in disclosing on these issues. So I mentioned requests, I've mentioned investors. What does all of this mean? How does it work? On your screen, you can see the different entities. So on the left, we have investors, purchasers, governments, and coalitions. These are the requesting entities. This means that they use CDP as a platform to send out a request to disclosing entities. These disclosing entities, that's the box in the middle, that includes companies, suppliers, cities, states, and regions, public authorities. And these disclosing entities then once again use our platform to provide data back to the requesting entities. So this data covers your risks, opportunities, investment strategies, if you have net zero climate transition plans, all of those sorts of things. These disclosing entities also use this data that they've provided to then measure and improve their own impact. So that's their impact not only on climate, but on forest and safeguarding water resources. And to explain this request a little bit further, you might be wondering, how are these companies selected to receive this request? So they're selected based on their performance and their presence in various stock market indexes, their environmental impact, their business activities, and their continuity with the previous years. So every year, capital market signatories, that are the investors, and financial institutions are interested in environmental performance of a wider range of companies in the investable universe, so to speak. So the number of requests expand. So to be clear here, it's not a one-to-one investor to company request, but an all-to-all request. So all investor signatories request all companies within these indexes and buckets. Conversely, a customer request is a one-to-one CDP supply chain member request. So a CDP supply chain member, which is a purchasing organization, then requests environmental information from key specific suppliers in their value chain. So our supply chain program works in tandem with the investor requests. So you might receive both an investor request and a supplier request. And there's actually very little extra work involved to satisfy these customer requests when you're already submitting to investors. So all disclosing organizations, the box in the middle, they will see questions related to climate change. As I mentioned before, that's our mandatory theme. Companies may also be asked to respond to questions on forests and water security based on whether it's material to them. After this request is made and companies disclose, the information that companies provide allows all relevant stakeholders to measure their impact and improve performance. So this was a quick, brief overview on what we are, how we work. I can also explain a little bit about why you should disclose through CDP and how you can then use your environmental data turn it into something actionable. So in today's rapidly evolving sustainability landscape, disclosure is no longer optional. It's a strategic necessity for long-term business resilience. Companies that disclose are not only managing risks, they are actively leading the market. They're securing capital. They're preparing for what's next. So more specifically, disclosure helps protect your bottom line by identifying risks early, surfacing opportunities, and guiding investment decisions, all the while protecting our planet. So CDP disclosures, for example, have already identified about $16 trillion in opportunities related to not just climate, but also nature. And they've saved about $13 billion by tackling emissions in their supply chains. These are not just environmental wins. As you can see, they're very solid business outcomes. So with CDP's right once, use many approach, a single submission can meet the needs of multiple stakeholders, as you saw on the previous slide, investors, customers, regulators, etc. So this data powers equity products, it informs procurement decisions from major buyers, and it's leveraged by the world's biggest financial institutions, which, as you saw on the first slide, manage about $127 trillion worth in assets. And moreover, disclosing through CDP also provides a competitive edge to your business. So it allows users to secure capital, to reduce risks, and even to boost efficiency. So for example here, for every dollar invested in adaptation and resilience, companies report an anticipated return of up to $19 million. We have also established robust partnerships to ensure that disclosed data drives value across the market and that we equip companies to navigate incoming regulation. So we're bringing together the most relevant frameworks and standards. So you have, for example, ISSB, IFRAG, TNFD, etc., into a single coherent disclosure system. And we're enabling businesses to then stay ahead of regulatory developments and respond proactively to these market expectations that are constantly shifting. So this ensures that your data is decision ready, as I mentioned, that it's fit for a rapidly evolving landscape, that it's aligned with the needs of all of these different stakeholders. And as I also mentioned previously, we were established 25 years ago. So for over 25 years now, we have provided a trusted infrastructure for environmental disclosure. We are constantly evolving to meet the needs of both the companies and the data users. And this year, our commitment is to deliver the highest level of stability and continuity. So year of stability, this is our motto for 2025, even as external requirements are growing more complex. So we remain a long-term partner. We're supporting credible disclosure, strategic alignment, and impactful environmental action. And speaking of impact, I can show you some more concrete numbers on what this impact looks like. So as mentioned earlier, CDP works with corporates and we work with SMEs. So the goal of working with them is to build resilient business models, sustainable business models. So we believe that environmental disclosure is not just about transparency for the sake of transparency. It's about enabling informed decisions that both protect the planet and long-term business value. So one thing that we strongly believe in is that you can't manage what you don't measure. So as you can see on the screen, year after year, we've seen that companies that start disclosing are significantly more likely to take action. So for example, by the third year of their disclosure, 69% of companies have already set a climate target compared to just 38% in the first year. And this is for climate. For water and forest, we've seen major growth as well. So for water, the share of companies assessing the business growth implications of water security jumps from just 28% to 40%. This is between year 1 and year 3. So that's a massive increase there. And in the forest space as well, about 80% of companies have developed policies and commitments by their third year, which is up from less than half of those disclosing for the first time. So as you can see, it's not just climate, it's also the nature themes that have seen a massive improvement. And these numbers show us that disclosure is driving progress. So it helps organizations identify their risks and opportunities earlier. And because you're identifying them earlier, it means that you're better equipped to then adapt and stay competitive and deliver value sustainably. Reporting to us is a strategic enabler for innovation, resilience, stakeholder trust, and very specifically, this is a quite important point, is compliance readiness. So speaking of compliance readiness, as transparency expectations continue to rise and more jurisdictions move towards mandatory environmental disclosure every single day, this strategic approach that we have becomes even more crucial. With many companies operating in regions that are anticipating these mandatory disclosure requirements, reporting voluntarily through CDP gives them a head start. So it allows them to gain a competitive advantage and be well positioned ahead of these regulatory shifts. To support organizations in this context, in this evolving context, we've ensured that the disclosure system that we have at CDP is closely aligned with the world's leading frameworks and standards. So you can see different examples on the screen, frameworks that we're fully aligned with, as well as frameworks where we're expanding alignment. So in 2018, CDP has been fully aligned with the TCFD recommendations. So we play a pivotal role in accelerating their global adoption. Starting in 2024, last year, CDP's climate disclosure is also fully aligned with the IFRS S2, which was developed by the ISSB, so the International Sustainability Standards Board. This IFRS S2 builds on the TCFD framework and provides detailed guidance for disclosing governance, strategy, risk and opportunity management, and also emissions data. So CDP's questionnaire helps companies report in line with these requirements, and also prepare for compliance with emerging regulations. CDP's corporate questionnaire is also fully aligned with the GHG protocol recommendations, which is the most widely used international standard for greenhouse gas accounting. Beyond all of these alignments, we're also advancing our interoperability with several other key frameworks. So, for example, our questionnaire shows a high degree of compatibility with the ESRS E1, which is the European Climate Disclosure Standard, and we're also working actively with IFRAG to develop joint mappings and resources that support streamlined reporting. So actually, you can even see all of these resources on our website. For example, the one with IFRAG, it's a detailed questionnaire map, which shows you exactly where we're aligned and where there's overlap. So you can already access that on our website as well. And lastly, CDP and GRI signed a memorandum of understanding during COP29 to deepen their collaboration and enable companies to provide more comparable and actionable data. So our questionnaire is already aligned with GRI 303, which is water and effluents as well, and climate-related disclosures, with further mapping underway to integrate GRI's new climate, energy, and biodiversity standards. We're also integrating nature-related disclosures into the platform in line with the TNFD recommendations. So we're helping companies take early action, as I keep mentioning, super important, early action, and build readiness for future requirements. And something worth mentioning here is that our questionnaire aligns with additional frameworks as well, such as the Accountability Framework Initiative for forests and the CEO Water Mandate for water. This broad network of alignment reinforces our unique role in translating all of these global standards as well as regional standards into something actionable, so actionable disclosure. And it's helping organizations to act with confidence. So it's not just a box ticking exercise in order to stay compliant, it's about concrete action. Moving on, speaking of action, what is happening with your data? Where is it going? Who's using it? As I mentioned, in 2024, over 24,000 companies representing about 67%, so about 2/3 of the world's market capitalization, report their environmental data through CDP. So this broad participation reflects a growing recognition. Environmental disclosure is not just about compliance, which is a super important part, but it's not just about that. It's about a strategic business advantage. So the key idea behind our approach is that companies can disclose their environmental data once, and then it's used by multiple stakeholders. So I keep mentioning this, it's super important. These multiple stakeholders cover investors, buyers, regulators, data providers, etc. And these are all over the globe. So what is this doing essentially? It's reducing costs, it's saving time, and it's ensuring that this same set of robust decision useful data serves various regulatory and market needs internationally. So this approach is creating value for disclosing organizations in 4 main areas that you can see on the screen. So I'll walk you through each of them. The first one is access to capital. So reporting through CDP can directly support a company's ability to access financial resources. Financial institutions are increasingly integrating environmental data into their decision-making processes. Transparent companies that proactively manage environmental risks often benefit from better access to capital, including investment opportunities, green financing products, and even preferential lending rates based on your environmental data and performance. We have a bunch of case studies on our website about this as well. You can read up about it. We can also share these resources after the webinar. So, for example, CDP data is used by financial data providers such as Bloomberg. So the Bloomberg terminal, public response data from about 12,000 companies, roughly, which are worth half of the global market cap, is natively accessible within the Bloomberg terminal for use in their ESG suite. Bloomberg has about 300,000 terminals in the market across the full trade lifecycle on both buy and sell sides. Then you also have the LSEG and the FTSE. CDP data is an essential component of their ESG data assets, both within the index aggregate capabilities, as well as raw information as part of the company overview. It's also used by major financial institutions. So you have Santander, Aviva Investors, etc. These organizations rely on CDP data to guide lending decisions, investment strategies, and also risk management. Moving on, Disclosing through CDP also means gaining a stronger and competitive market position. So you're improving public reputation, reducing operational costs, identifying new business opportunities, and aligning with stakeholder values. So all of this is why CDP data is widely used by market influencers and even information providers like S&P Global, NZDPU, who we have a partnership with, the Net Zero Data Public Utility, WWF, VCMI, and the Financial Times to develop ESG ratings, indexes, and research that directly impact how companies are being perceived in the market, including assessing a company's value alignment with environmental expectations. So those are already two major reasons, but additionally, CDP contributes to global initiatives like the Science-Based Targets Initiative as well, or the SBTN. So we help shape corporate climate and nature-related disclosure frameworks worldwide. Now, a third major benefit relates to market access, which is increasingly critical for companies operating in global supply chains. So you have leading global brands like Microsoft, Walmart, L'Oreal, AstraZeneca, etc. All of them use CDP data. They assess and select suppliers based on the disclosed climate and environmental data. So just to give you an example here, Walmart, for example, integrates CDP data into its global supply chain program to drive climate action across thousands of suppliers worldwide. And lastly, by reporting through CDP, companies are also preparing for regulatory requirements in different jurisdictions, while also meeting the needs of investors and buyers who are increasingly driven by sustainability criteria. So we actually have government bodies such as the European Commission, the government of Japan, government of Brazil, and the French government that rely on CDP data to monitor corporate environmental action and track progress towards national targets. So this shows you the bigger picture of all the different stakeholders, from government to companies to all of these indexes that are all making use of the raw data that CDP receives every year. So we help organizations stay ahead by preparing them for current and upcoming disclosure requirements. This is across multiple regions, reducing the risk of litigation related to ESG performance, providing governments and regulators with reliable corporate data that informs policy development as well as capital allocation. And in summary, this whole write once, read many approach positions organizations to access capital more easily, strengthen your competitive advantage, meet procurement requirements, connect with your key buyers, and stay ahead of regulatory demands globally. So all of this, what it means for your organization is that you're spending less time, you're spending less money on fragmented reporting processes, and you have more resources available to invest directly into climate action and sustainability strategies. So as we have been for the past 25 years a trusted partner, and we've supported organizations globally, and like I mentioned, our platform is fully aligned with the most relevant standards and frameworks. And a clear example of this is the quote that you see on the screen by the ISSB chair, through which he gave us explicit recognition, and this gave companies confidence that reporting to CDP means being prepared for mandatory climate disclosure. So covered a lot of different topics, thrown a lot of information at you about what we are, how we work, what's our approach. Coming to 2025 and what you can expect from us this year, what this disclosure cycle will mean for responders. I'll start off with the timeline. So our timeline is divided into 3 phases or components. You have the prepare, disclose, and access insights phase. So on during the week of April 28th, the portal already opened for requesters. This is that first box that you saw earlier, so investors, purchasing organizations, etc. And they already have begun preparing for the cycle. They start to send out invites and requests to their customers to disclose. For the capital market signatories, we also created a letter to the board. So this is a letter that's sent to companies that was sent mid-April on behalf of the capital market signatories and was sent through us. This week, the response, on June 18th already, the response window opened on the portal for the 2025 cycle. The scoring deadline will be during the week of 15 September, more or less. However, if you are a discloser that does not wish to receive a score, then you still have the option to submit after this deadline, so until mid-November. So June to September, these 4 months, this is the phase of disclosure during which you have time to submit and receive a score. And then you have another couple of months if you wish to submit and do not wish to receive a score. And then, of course, at the end of the year, scores will be published and handed back to companies. I mentioned this earlier, our motto for this year, for 2025, is the year of stability. So what this means is that we're striving for both internal and external stability. So the stability ranges from our portal functionality and how much stable user experience there is, as well as our questionnaire. So we actually have minimal questionnaire and scoring changes. And whatever, even if there have been slight changes, it's mainly to the way that questions are phrased so that they're less ambiguous and more clear. And we already have guidance documents for this published on our website. So you can already go and see what few changes have been made to the questionnaire or to the scoring methodology. And we also have how we communicate with disclosing companies and our overall customer experience and user journey. We have improved translations, for example, of the questionnaire in other languages. And something that we promise is in-year scores. So 2025 scores will be released before the end of 2025. Moving on to some improvements for 2025, in addition to all of the stability we hope to provide, is specifically for the disclosures on this call. Some improvements that you can look out for are, first and foremost, an enhanced copy forward feature. So what this does is it enables organizations to utilize parts of their 2024 disclosure for this year's disclosure. So this is greatly expanded from last year with additional questions included to lessen the reporting burden. So it's important to note that the option to copy forward only occurs once during your initial questionnaire setup for the current cycle. To ensure that all possible content is copied forward from your last submission, it's recommended to opt in. So you have to manually physically click opt in to all applicable projects and environmental issues. So for example, water, forest, etc., before you submit your setup for the first time. So I just want to reiterate here because this is super important. We've received a few questions on this already since the portal already opened. Copy forward is triggered the first time you submit your questionnaire setup. After this submission, past responses cannot be copied forward into the current cycle. And the second improvement that we have is the portal homepage and navigation enhancements. So this includes clearer guidance for the parent company submissions. So for example, if a parent is disclosing on behalf of the subsidiary, there's clearer guidance for how to grab a request and things like that. We also have enhanced payment and invoicing capabilities, and overall better look and feel, and upgraded features in the portal. We also have a simplified register to disclose forms. So this is companies that are registering for the first time. We have a form with clearer user instructions. And this is already available on the portal from 18th of June when the response window opened. So you can go see it, you can register. And the last thing here are questionnaire enhancements. Like I mentioned, questions have been made clearer. If something was ambiguous, we tried to frame that in a more straightforward way. And this also includes one-click editing of matrix cells, for example, or auto-expanding matrix fields. So basically an improved and faster user experience because you're working with quite an in-depth questionnaire. So we wanted to make this experience as smooth as possible. So speaking of this corporate questionnaire, I mentioned also alignment and all the different things that the questionnaire includes. What does this questionnaire look like? So this is the layout and structure of the questionnaire. It'll remain the same as it was in 2024. Once again, year of stability. So these are the 13 modules in the full corporate questionnaire. The modules that you see in black on the left and the extreme right, modules 1 to 6 and also 12 and 13, they are integrated. So this means that they include questions which cover more than one environmental issue area. And getting into modules 7 to 11, which correspond to environmental performance, each of these is specific to one environmental issue or theme. So for example, in module 7, an organization would report here its greenhouse gas emissions data. As a disclosure, you may not see every module if you are not responding to a particular environmental issue. So if you're not going to disclose on water, for example, then you're not going to see module 9. Module 12 is also on environmental performance, but it's specific to the financial services sector, and it covers all environmental issues. And then module 13 is just the final short module. It's a sign-off, a few other details. So sector-specific questions can be found across the questionnaire. For the purposes of this presentation, only sections that are entirely sector-specific have been indicated in the module structures. This is roughly what you can expect. So we also have some modules specific to business strategy, governance, etc. This is the questionnaire, and you can also see here on the screen a little bit about our scoring methodology. So in previous years, when you receive a score, and this is the same this year as well, when you receive a score, you'll receive an overall score and you'll receive individual category scores. So this will reflect your performance in specific areas of the questionnaire. On the screen now, what you're seeing, you can see the different scores available and how these are used to indicate the level of action that's reported by the company to assess and manage environmental impacts. So for example, a D score represents disclosure. This means that you're just starting out to disclose environmental impacts. So this D disclosure score measures the completeness of an organization's reporting. The number of points allocated to each question depends on two things: the amount of data that is requested and their relative importance to data users. So amount of data and the relative importance. Then you have the level above that, which is the awareness score, which can be a C or a C minus. This measures the comprehensiveness of your organization's evaluation of how environmental issues interact with your business. So awareness score does not indicate that you've taken any action to address these environmental issues beyond some maybe initial screenings or assessments. So again, disclosure, starting out to disclose. Awareness, you have some higher knowledge of these impacts, but not taking any action. Then you move on to management. Management points are awarded for answers that provide us with concrete evidence that you're undertaking actions associated with good environmental management. This management is based on the awareness that you have of your organization's impact. This is not just for climate, but also maybe water and forests if you're disclosing on those issues. This management score of B or B minus measures whether organizations are managing environmental impact, but it doesn't indicate whether they are undertaking actions that mark them out as a leader in their field or in their sector. To earn this leadership status, which is A or A minus, organizations must demonstrate best practice in the strategies that they utilize and in the actions that they undertake. So these actions represent best practice as formulated by organizations that CDP works with, or organizations, other organizations that advance environmental stewardship, and in many cases are already embodied by organizations leading in environmental policy and practice. So this is roughly a snapshot of the different thresholds that we have. And something that I want to mention here, again, we get a lot of questions about this because this is also a change that we implemented last year, is essential criteria. So essential criteria, what are they? What does it mean? What does it apply to now? Essential criteria are criteria that focus on ensuring adequate governance and processes that should be in place to address an organization's climate, water, or forest-related risks and opportunities to prepare for ambitious corporate action on climate change. So in previous years, these essential criteria were only applied to the A level, and they included some key data points, for example, that companies had to meet in order to be considered best practice. But the change that we implemented last year was that from 2024 onwards, the essential criteria for climate questions expanded, and now it's applied to all levels. So the areas of focus here include governance, processes, and ambition. This will set a consistent baseline of reporting at each level for CDP climate change scores, and this will ensure that critical gaps necessary for all organizations to reach a suitable disclosure baseline are filled. And this will also ensure that organizations include key data points that are critical to understanding how they are assessing and responding to environmental issues. So the full details of the essential criteria for climate change can already be found in a document, again, already on our website. We would strongly recommend first-time responders to read through this document before beginning your disclosure. Something that I can explain maybe by going back a slide with an example is that essential criteria make you eligible for a certain score, make you eligible to be scored at a certain level. So for example, say I am disclosing at a level which shows that I have knowledge of impacts on the environment. If I do not meet the essential criteria at that level, then I'm not going to be eligible in the first place to be scored at that level and therefore receive a C or a C minus. And that is going to limit my performance and evaluation. So essential criteria before anything else. If you do not meet these essential criteria, you are not eligible to be scored at a certain level. So this document is super important, and we really encourage companies to go take a look, understand what criteria and what data points we're looking for. And when it comes to water security and forests, if you're disclosing on these issues, then essential criteria is still only applicable at the leadership, which is the A and the A minus and the A list level. And lastly, I would like to end with the response publicity status. So we spoke about the questionnaire, we spoke about your score, the essential criteria. Your response now is different from your score. So what does it mean to have a public or a non-public response? So you have the option to submit either a public or a non-public response when you disclose through CDP. Our work is focused on transparency, so of course we do advise companies to make their response publicly available. But again, this is a choice for the company to make. So please note here that if you want to be scored at the leadership level, then it's a mandatory requirement that you should have a public response. So therefore, this is a consideration that could affect your overall CDP score, and one that we recommend that you take some time when making. So responding publicly essentially means that the full response to the questionnaire is made available for data users. And these data users would also include your requesters, so capital market signatories, customers, etc. Responding non-publicly, on the other hand, means that the full response to the questionnaire is viewable only by the requesting stakeholders. If companies choose to respond non-publicly, their data can still be used, but in a more aggregated or anonymized way in reports or studies. So this was the difference between a public and non-public response. And with that, I will hand it over to Paul for some top tips for first-time responders.
Thank you, Tanisha. That was certainly informative. So what we're going to go through now over the next several slides are some kind of top tips that we've put together to kind of support if this is your first year of disclosure, just to see what the platform looks like. And obviously for those who have used the platform before, this will just serve as a refresher. One thing to note, this we won't be going into detail of module by module and question by question. As Mark alluded to earlier, there's a further training and more advanced training coming up later in the disclosure cycle. But again, we'll speak about that a little bit later, and we'll send out emails about that. So if we just pop to the next slide, please. So what we've so if this is your first year, then what we need to do is to if you go onto the CDP website, and you can access you will be looking for a request to register to disclose form. So that again is in the help center on the website. So that is now currently live. You can see here saying the week of the 16th, which we're past. So that is now live. The key information here that would be required if you have a DUNS number, so that's the Dun and Bradstreet number. So that would just help identify the correct business, and obviously with that any subsidiaries or parent companies. So it will just help identify the correct company. So you just go through that form. That will be sent over to CDP, who will then check all of the information. And once that's been processed, you'll receive the request to disclose via CDP as a self-selected customer. So that will be where it's not one of the signatory bodies looking for you to request. It's for you to voluntarily select and fill out the questionnaire. Next slide, please. So I think we have a couple of points on this one, Tanisha. So I might have to do a couple of clicks here. So the first thing, when you do get access to your portal, you will see up in the top left we have a selecting your dashboard. So that is where we'll click into this one, and we'll be able to, for the majority of the companies, kind of you'll only see disclosures up in that corner. So a disclosor is the person who will be entering data. So you can have multiple disclosures if needs be, which we regularly see. For some users, you will also see the option to change to requesters. So that's where, if you're a supply chain member or an SCM, you might see that acronym. That's where you'll be able to see what your request your customers to disclose via CDP. Beneath that, we have again, up in the top left, we have the invite team members tab. So again, that's where we would be, if you have multiple stakeholders putting information in, you can have as many people as you want to add information for your company. It's key in here to select somebody as a submission lead. So every company, so if the first person in usually is the person who will be the submission lead, or they can self-select themselves as submission lead, or once new members are invited, then it's vital that we get a submission lead. So that is the person who will be sending and hitting the submit button. We'll talk about that in a moment on a further slide. Further down, we have the so I think we're back a slide again, Tanisha. Yeah. So we have the managing requests. So this one is that's just for where you're getting any stakeholders for entering your information. And then at the bottom of the page, we'll see the main point of contact. So for the majority of you, you should see somebody, I believe it should be Emily Maitland, I believe. But again, you can see that when you enter your dashboard, the correct person there. And then not everyone will have an account manager, but if you need any further support, over on the right hand side, there's the getting support option, which obviously is a very useful and lots of information in there. And then finally, in sort of the center there, getting started with your disclosure. So that is the main area where you will start. You can see there's two options. There's option 1, confirm the submission lead, and number 2, set up your questionnaire. So that is where all of the information will be started to be entered, and then from there we will start the questionnaire in full. Next slide, Tanisha, please. So again, to set up new users, what we do is we just click on the invite user, just on and again, that's up in the top left. And then when you're adding the new user, it's vital that, so you just put in your username, so typically your email. And then this is where, so the kind of the box over towards the right here, where you see disclosure role, that is the key information. So that typically we would have any new contact would just be a disclosure. When you click on that little drop down, there's 2 options, as submission lead or contributor. So again, we will only ever have one person being the submission lead, and they'll be responsible for setting up the questionnaire, submitting the questionnaire, and any payment details that are required. And then a disclosure contributors. You can have multiple disclosure contributors, and they will be additional people who can come into the questionnaire and fill out information. And then just on the right again there, that's the supply chain members. So if you are a supply chain member, then you can add yourself as a requester role as well. But if you're not in there, it's still there, the drop down box, but you don't need to add any information into that one. Next slide, please. So looking back at the original, at the first slide I mentioned, so where we had the 2 options, we've confirmed the submission lead. So that, again, we've just spoken about that in the previous one. So that is setting up all of the relevant team members. And then the second part here we have is the set up the questionnaire. So that is seeking information regarding what size company you are, what revenues, what employees, whether you're an SME or not. So that will just check, and the reasoning for this is to ensure that you are given the correct questionnaire. So there's several questions within that to come in and just say, okay, this is the high level information about our organization, and it'll guide you through all of these questions, and that will then determine which questionnaire that you will get. So there's, as it says here, the activity classification. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there's quite a lot of different sectors, and within sectors there's individual subsectors as well. So it's key that you get the correct information for this. If you're under a certain revenue and number of employees, then you are given the SME questionnaire, which is a slimmed down version of the corporate questionnaire. And again, within this setup phase, it will determine, based on the activity classification, whether you will get the forest or water questionnaires as well. And next slide, please. So here we've so once the questionnaire is set up, then that can only be submitted by the submission lead. So whoever you have chosen, whether that be yourself or somebody else, then they are the person that's at the end of the questionnaire once you're completed, and we would typically recommend doing that towards the end of September, or sorry, the middle of September, before the deadline date, obviously. But keep it open until then, even if you have this finished at this stage, which would be very early. But that person is whoever has been selected as submission lead will be the key person there. So whenever the organizations accept or new, the other part that the the submission lead is any resubmissions of organisations accepting or mergers of new requests. So that's where, if you have any further information, then the submission lead will need to have a look at that. And then one key thing here is also, and I think Tanisha mentioned it, is that once the questionnaire is the kind of pre-questionnaire is set up, reopening it and changing any of the setup or the edit mode, it must be resubmitted by the submission lead, so to access the questionnaire. So it's, you know, I suppose it's vital that the questionnaire is set up correctly. And then, as I mentioned there, like if you do need to change anything, you can always go back to the resubmission, but it is a submission lead that needs to do that. I've just put in a QR code, so obviously there will be a delay between you getting the slide deck. So that is a live questionnaire at the moment. That'll bring you to the knowledge article here that is mentioned on the right. So that's that web page will bring you, that QR code, sorry, will bring you directly to that web page. Okay, so if we go on to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there's plenty of resources. So when you log into your dashboard, there's plenty of resources available. So where can we find all of these? The first place is obviously on cdp.net. So even before you get into your platform, if you may notice up in the top right, top left even, of the website, there's a disclosure cycle for 2025. So clicking on that will bring you into the disclosure, the next disclosure page. In the bottom right, you'll see there's a little pop-up box that helps you navigate. So there's the key dates, questionnaires, guidance, etc. So that will be there. It will fade down into a little box, kind of a red box on the website. But at any point, if you need to go back and find out where that is just hover over it and it'll bring back up this that little box, the navigation box. If we scroll to the next page, please. So again, what we have is further access to any other resources. There's the How to Disclose page under the Disclose Data tab at the top. So if you want to scroll to any relevant sections to ensure that for the corporates tab to find the relevant material for corporates. Again, scroll down through, you can see all of the relevant information, and there is also a kind of a little search box in this web page as well to help narrow and define further information. Next slide. So going back into your portal, on the left hand side, you have the left hand side kind of elongates and gets smaller. So sometimes you might just see the circle with the question mark in it. Sometimes, but then if you hover over it, that border will expand and you see support. So again, there's a vast array of support in this section. So clicking that will open it up. So over here on the right hand side, you'll see on support, the help center. So there's report guidance, additional guidance. So all of that information that is on the main website is also here within the portal itself. So you can click on that help center and that will open up a form that you can select several different options, and that will help get narrow down the information to send to the correct person at CDP for your query. So there's a lot of information within this particular area of the dashboard as well. Next slide, please. So here we just have a list of kind of valuable resources that we recommend exploring kind of to prepare for the cycle, and even during the cycle, it's always really useful to have the several different documents open for as you're responding to the questionnaire. lots of really useful information that's kind of broken down into various different modules, and rather than having everything in one go. So the CDP questionnaire overview provides a description of the question structures, the questionnaire and reporting guidance that helps companies understand the requirements in each question, kind of mapping to a larger frameworks and the ambition. And this will be integrated into the portal on launch. Then, so each of the questions, there's a little, when you're answering questions, there's a little, I think it's a little book option, and you can click on that and see further information within the actual questionnaire itself. The scoring introduction module, that is, that document introduces the scoring methodology and the scoring process. Again, Tanisha touched on that. Each of the disclosure, awareness, management, and leadership, and how that works. Then, and for any more details on scoring, we recommend using the scoring methodology documents for specific themes, kind of to really understand the scoring and what how that question is scored, and what is required. And lastly, the essential criteria, as again Tanisha was mentioning, that is vital as well to ensure that you have an understanding of that, so you can ensure that you're putting your best foot forward when responding to CDP. So that concludes the kind of the presentation, and what we will do now is we can open up the floor. So in that Q&A, hopefully you'll see Q&A at the top of your screens. Again, as Gavin mentioned, if you click, when you click on that, I think by default it says start a discussion. If you just click on the little where there's a little option with the speech bubble, if you ask a question in there, then we will be able to see that. So I can just see one question for the moment, and that is there a CDP network in France? So
yes, yeah, I can take that one. So yes, we do. There isn't a CDP France specific network, but CDP Europe covers the French region and companies headquartered in France.
I might just say, Tanisha, as well, that the CDP network that we have in Ireland and the activities within it, and how long it's been going, I think is reasonably unique. So I'm not blowing our own trumpet too much, but I don't think there's, if you're looking for something that's an analog to the CDP network Ireland in France, I'm not sure that specifically exists. But of course, as Tanisha said, CDP Europe will be able to support, but it's less of a peer-to-peer network like CDP Network Ireland is.
That's great. Okay, I can see quite a few questions here. So let's have a quick look. So if in 2023, CDP score report was presented in a nice format, including visual graphics, understanding your score, explanatory, etc. In 2024, reporting was provided by a very simplified Excel. Can CDP score be reverted to the same format? So I guess, Tanisha, is that one that you could field, please?
Yeah, sure. So we did update the format for 2024 because of all the changes that took place in the questionnaire with the scoring, etc. We were able to deliver this Excel file, which had your regional averages and all of the data, but the format was different. But from 2025 onwards, we will be going back to the score report PDF. That's what you can expect from us this year.
Perfect. Tanisha, can I ask you, will we be going back to the the spider chart that we used to get in the past? Will you be doing that, or will it just stay in a more linear format?
Yeah, most likely it'll be similar to what we used to deliver earlier. We are in the process of updating it, so we haven't finalized the exact template, but you can expect something similar to what you had in 2023.
Okay, great.
So I have another one here. Can we confirm when the score appeal process for 24 will be completed and when the score reports will be sent?
Yeah, so I can take that one as well with regards to the score appeal process. We did expect some delays, but by mid-July, the final score appeal results should be sent out to all companies that were in appeal, and then you'll get your a score report with all of the your category scores, your overall score, sector averages, etc., and also the form that you had filled in to appeal. You'll get that filled out by our scoring team. So an explanation of whether your score changed, if yes, how come, if not, why not, etc.
Thank you, Tanisha. To give Tanisha a break, Gavin, I might send this one your way. So how prepared does an organization need to be before starting the process, specifically in terms of data maturity? Does data collection and monitoring need to be well established beforehand?
The answer to that is both yes and no. So, I mean, ideally, you would have your carbon footprint completed, and you'd have access to your energy usage and your scope 3 usage. But the more sort of clear answer really is you need to just start with what you have. It's better to get started and to get a submission in than to try and wait for everything to be perfect. So certainly footprint, and you wouldn't have to have all the categories in scope 3 calculated. So if you have scope 1, scope 2, and a select number of categories in scope 3, you have some understanding in terms of what the organization has done in terms of governance, etc. It just makes sense to get the submission in and fill it out as complete as you can. One of the impediments, I suppose, to people getting started is they feel they don't have as much data as maybe other companies are publishing. But it's very important to realize that in order to achieve, and we can talk about the letter grades in more detail, but in order to move up the letter grades from a scoring perspective, it takes time, and it takes many years of continuous improvement. And it certainly helps that when you do start with however much information you have, the next year you have a much clearer idea of what you need or what you're missing. So it really is difficult to start at times because you might feel that you don't have everything. But all the companies that we've spoken to over the years, once they start, it just clarifies a lot of things, and then they can focus on maybe a select number of areas that they want to improve for the following year, another couple of areas they want to improve for the year after that, and in 3 years' time they're going to have a really strong, robust CDP response.
Thank you, Gavin. At what point in the setup does one select the option for rolling forward? I believe that is automatically done in the climate change questionnaire. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tanisha, but I also believe that the option is in the questionnaire setup.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the pre-questionnaire setup where you'll see the option to choose water and forest as well. Since climate is mandatory, the data will be carried forward automatically. But if you want water and forest data to be carried forward, rolled forward, then you have to select the pre-questionnaire setup.
Thank you. If an entity meets only one of the two parameters for an SME status, are they still considered an SME, or do they need to meet both parameters?
Do you want me to take that? Yeah, my understanding is you need to meet the requirements. I can't tell from the questionnaire whether they by not meeting those requirements it'll push them up into the full questionnaire. But you do have to meet the requirements that are asked. So if you don't meet them, if you only met one of them and you don't meet the others, then you're more likely going to be responding to the full questionnaire.
And again, this would be when you do the pre-questionnaire part, that will determine. So when you put in the numbers for the FTE and the revenue figures, then that will determine automatically which questionnaire you will get.
Yes, yeah. And there is I know on the CDP website there is sort of published detail, so you can see the criteria. You can check them against your own organization. But yeah, that is I think the purpose of that pre-questionnaire piece is to decide which one you should be answering.
Yeah, I think there's one final question. If the questionnaire setup must be resubmitted after the acceptance or merger of new requests, what happens to the questionnaire content that has been carried forward from the previous year during the first setup? Does it remain?
I'm happy to take this one. I think it would depend on what you mean by acceptance of merger of new requests. If you mean that a new supply chain customer, for example, has requested you, and you're simply accepting this request and allowing this stakeholder access to your response, then your response from the previous year is still carried forward. That doesn't change. However, if you mean by accepting requests, you mean grabbing requests on behalf of subsidiary. So a parent is now disclosing on behalf of the subsidiary. Then the subsidiary's 2024 response is not automatically carried forward into the parents. What would be carried forward is just what the parent disclosed in 2024. I hope that provides some clarity.
Yeah, thank you, Tanisha. Then what is the cost for registration and first-time disclosure for an SME? I don't have that to hand, but I believe it is published on the website. If anyone has that to hand, I can have a look at that, look for that and respond. And then we have, will we get a copy of the slides? Yes, yes. That will be sent out over the next couple of days.
One of the things, Tanisha, I wanted to maybe just to pick up on is the supply chain requests. I know that when many people either receive a supply chain request, they're not previous responders, or they are a responder and they receive a supply chain request. You did touch on it in the slides, but just to clarify, what are they supposed to fill out, and what happens if they don't fill it out, and where does that information go, and who exactly is it shared with? So can you talk to that maybe?
Yeah, of course. So the questionnaire is one and the same. So regardless of whether you receive this request from the investors, which is capital markets signatories, financial institutions, or you receive it from your supply chain customer, the questionnaire is the same. There might be certain data points that your customer might value more and might have specially requested, but the questionnaire is the same, and the data that you fill in is then provided to these stakeholders in the same format, so to speak. So it's not two different questionnaires or subsections that you have to fill out for different stakeholders as such. That's the whole point of the right ones use many approach.
Yeah, and just in terms of how companies would fill that out, there are a number of ways to sort of to calculate that information, but essentially what they're looking at is at a minimum their percentage of scope 1 and 2 emissions that are associated with the products and goods that they're supplying specifically to the company that has that supply chain request. So and I don't believe that information is visible or published outside of that other organization. So that information will just go straight to the requester, and it stays in their system. It doesn't get viewed or seen by anybody else. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And in terms of if you want to touch on that sort of scoring journey, I did touch on it at the beginning, or in my answer a moment ago, but I know a lot of particularly people who've responded for the first time, they may look at their score and maybe they get a C and they're disappointed and they feel that it may reflect badly on their organization by having a C when maybe their competitor has a B or an A. I mean, generally, in terms of the A-list companies, could you maybe talk to how many of them there are? Because there are quite a few, so it's quite a difficult thing to achieve. So I believe there's only 200 or something odd A-list companies in the world. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, as of 2024. Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of their journeys, those type of companies, it typically has taken them quite a while to get there. So it's not something that they would happen overnight. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I can speak a little bit to what kinds of best practices they develop over the years that, or rather what common pitfalls they avoid that lead them up, up to that A-list level. But I think starting out at the disclosure level, so for any first-time responders on this call, the most common pitfall that we see is leaving cells blank. So this is if they don't have data, if they're not sure of what to fill out, they leave cells blank, and then this affects their scoring. So that's one of the major ones. And at the more awareness level is that they lack an understanding of their environmental impact. So even if they're filling out all of the questions, the answers don't show to our scoring team that they truly understand all of the impacts, all of the risks and opportunities. And at the more management and A-list, so higher levels, we see the essential criteria being one of the major issues that holds companies back. So yeah, attention to these key data points.
Yeah, and I think for any organization who a key focus is to try and improve their score year on year. Maybe if you have a C, you want to move up to a B or up to an A. I think it's useful two things. One is that if you are an organization that is sitting on a B, you don't necessarily have to get an A. So we would speak to many companies, and from an organizational perspective, they may be happy with a B, and they don't necessarily have ambition to try and achieve an A. And that's okay. It's okay to meet the requirements of the company. If it's something that they are sitting on a B and they do want to push forward to try and get an A, then typically they will have to they'll really have to focus on putting resources around that and trying to address any of the gaps that they would have, the essential criteria, other things in the questionnaire. If a company though is going back to sitting at a C or they got a D or whatever it is, there are plenty of tools and methods without getting any external help from anybody else that there are practical ways that they can improve their score. One of the areas which I know is something we've been mentioning for many years, but most of the questionnaires are public on the CDP website. So if you have a login, you can log in and you can look at any of the A-list responses in detail. You literally see everything that they put in there, and you can benchmark yourselves against other companies in your sector. And now we don't encourage anyone to copy what they've put in the questionnaire, but it does certainly give some assistance to be able to see what an A-list response looks like. And that can help not only informing your own plan of how you're going to develop this over the next couple of years, if you have ambitions to get an A, but just generally speaking, it's something that a lot of companies overlook. They don't read other people's responses or other organizations' responses, and it can be extremely useful to do that. In addition, though, once you read another response, and I think we've alluded to this before, but don't underestimate the amount of support and help that is on the CDP website in terms of obviously the essential criteria that was mentioned. The scoring methodologies are all there. There is category weightings, which is another area that you need to consider. So there's more than enough information if you have the time and energy to sit down and put a good game plan together for your whatever you want to achieve in CDP 2025. But as we said before, taking a slightly more measured approach in terms of how you do this. So don't try to go from a C to an A in 1 year. You'd have to probably give up the day job to do that and focus all your time. So just look at it in the time that you have and your team has available to look at what you can put into improving the CDP response in, say, 2025, and then a game plan for what you want to do over the next couple of years. So I don't know, Tanisha, do you have anything else to add to that? These are just kind of practical things that people can do to help improve their scores.
Yeah, no, I think you've covered that perfectly. I'll just say the resources that Paul pointed out earlier are your best starting point. So look at all the essential criteria and scoring methodology documents. They're your best friends over the next 4 months.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I think if there is no more questions, so I think we will just wrap it up now, give everyone back the 10 minutes. I'd like to thank especially Tanisha for joining us today. You covered a huge amount of ground. There's a lot of information in there, and I thought you delivered it expertly, so thank you very much. Thanks to Mark and to Paul. And thank you to everyone for joining. You have to take time out of your day, and we really do set these up to be useful, and we hope that you find it useful, and you will be able to go back over the slides and pick up on some of that detail that was covered, and there will also be a recording of the event. So thank you very much, and yeah, we look forward to talking with people soon.
Thanks, Gavin. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, everyone.